All right, so this video here is a little different than any other video that I've made, and its purpose is to follow the two previous videos. If you haven't watched those videos, for this one to make sense, go watch them. You have to watch them. So let me say that doing both of these, the two previous videos to this, required me to do a lot of research. Far more research than I had ever planned to do. I spent weeks reading scholarly commentaries, consulting lexicons on Daniel. Now, let me just say, as a Christian, I've had no interest in prophecy in the book of Daniel and Revelation whatsoever. The reason is this, simply. I don't care about horns and beasts and oceans and dragons and Gog and Magog and looking at news and, oh, Bible prophecy is coming alive now. I'll know it when it happens. But I'm more concerned with the here and the now. And the here and the now is there are Seventh-day Adventists going to hell with Bibles in their hands because they got a false Christ and they got a false gospel. That's what I'm concerned with. That's why I've never had an interest in prophecy. However, if I'm going to study Adventism like I am and have been, I have to understand and study prophecy. So I am, and I did. And I started with Daniel 9:24 to 27, even though Adventists only look at Daniel 9:25. Of course, they only read Bible verses. They don't read Bible passages. You saw in the two preceding videos. I don't need to go over them in detail. Again, you have to watch them for this video to make sense. At Daniel 9:25, the decree to rebuild Jerusalem has absolutely no relationship to 457 BC. Because there is no decree by Ezra 7:7 and 7:8 to rebuild anything. It just didn't happen. So you saw that. Daniel 9:25, Ezra 7:7 do not support the 458 BC prophecy. It falls down. By the way, Daniel 9:24 alone, one of the 6 items that you saw referenced in the video of Daniel 9:24 is at the end of the 490 years, it says, that's when all the 6 items of Daniel 9:24 are complete. And that means that one of those 6 items is the end of visions and the end of prophecies. You know what? That verse alone, that one point alone, defeats Ellen White and her visions and prophecies. Because that means no more visions and prophecies. When does the Seventh-day Adventist chronology end of the 490 years? AD 34. So by Seventh-day Adventist interpretation of Daniel, there are no more visions and prophecies after AD 34. See, the Word of God is what refutes Seventh-day Adventism. By the way, Ezra 7:7, there's no decree to build anything in Ezra 7. It's a decree to send a Levitical priest, Ezra, to go do what he said was in his heart, to teach the law of God to the exiles that were returning back to Jerusalem. That's Ezra 7. If you want to find out when the city of Jerusalem is going to be rebuilt, we got to go to Nehemiah. Nehemiah chapters 1 and 2, where eventually Nehemiah says, send me to the city of my fathers that I may rebuild it. There's your reference to rebuilding a city, 445 BC. So see, the Adventist chronology has just crumbled right there on those 2 points. I spent many hours in lexicons and scholarly books. As I'm reading these books, I'm thinking, okay, now Daniel is a big deal for Seventh-day Adventists. Right? They get Daniel and prophecy seminars and Daniel this. It's a big deal for Seventh-day Adventists. And well, if it's such a big deal, and if Adventists have it so right, how come everybody I'm reading is absolutely either ignoring them or ridiculing them? Because that's what I'm surrounded with. Absolutely nobody that I read recognizes the SDA interpretation of Daniel 9:25 and Ezra 7:7 to be anything like Seventh-day Adventists believe. Nobody. No one. Now, let me say this. Just because I read a bunch of scholars who either ignore Seventh-day Adventism or in some cases ridicule it, does not mean that the scholars are right. Because if a bunch of scholars either say, Adventism is right or Adventism is wrong, that in itself is not truth. Just because a bunch of scholars say it. That's called argumentum ad populum, which means because a bunch of people say it's true, then it's true. No, truth either stands on its own or the falsehood stands on its own. And in our case, the truth is either true because it's in the Bible or it's untrue because it's not found in the Bible. And I've already told you what the problem is with 457 BC and the Adventist interpretation of Daniel 9:25 and Ezra 7:7. And it falls because of what's in the Bible, not because a bunch of scholars say so or don't say so. So I want to make that distinction. Adventism has been proven false because the Bible proves it false, as you saw in the previous two videos. By the way, argumentum ad populum is a very, very famous thing Adventists like to do. Adventists all the time will, I'll question an Adventist. They say, oh, we believe the Bible and the Bible alone. I go, great, great. You believe that the beast in Revelation is the papacy in Rome, right? Oh, yes, I do. Good, show me what Bible verse says that. And then they come back to me with this, like virtually 100% of the time. Well, the Reformers taught it. Argumentum ad populum. You only believe it's true because a bunch of Reformers said it's true. You don't believe it's true because the Bible said so. See the difference? Adventists really don't believe in the Bible. And that's why it's a logical fallacy to appeal to a group of people. The Bible is what tells us what's true and what's false. Besides consulting all these well-known, scholarly commentaries and lexicons, I read 18 works, scholars on Daniel, and I'm going to use scholars in air quotes, and you're going to see why here in a minute. But I remember, this is what struck me, this is what made me do this video. I'm reading all these scholarly references to Daniel. Some of these references are horrible too. Some of these scholars are horrible. As I'm reading all this stuff, I'm thinking, not one of them is taking the Adventist interpretation seriously. It's just ignoring it or ridiculing it is what they're doing. So what I did was I said, I'm going to go through each one of these books and I'm going to tab. I'm going to look in the bibliography. I'm going to look in Daniel 9:24 to 27, and I'm going to look at Daniel 8:14 and see, do they interpret Daniel 8 or 9 like the Adventists do, and how many Adventist citations are there? And you know what I found out? Not one of the scholarly references takes the key components, interpretation of Daniel 8:14 and 9:25 like the Adventists do. It is absolutely ignored 100% of the time. Now what I did find was in all these 18 scholarly references that I have here, there were 13 out of the 18. 13 out of the 18, 72%, absolutely ignored Seventh-day Adventist authors, interpretation, everything. 5 of the 18 had some Seventh-day Adventist citations. Here are those 5, right here. Now, at least 3 of these 5 here, in terms of the Seventh-day Adventist interpretation, again, what they cited is really doctrinally insufficient. It's just, it's of no matter. They would say things like, oh, so this Seventh-day Adventist author believes that Daniel 9:25 is a Messianic reference. Okay, that's fine. Or this Seventh-day Adventist author believes that the 70 weeks are a consecutive period of time. Because not everybody does. Some of them believe that the 7th week is still yet to come, right? So there's that distinction. And they cite that, okay. Or that the 2,300 days, not years, days, again, see that still doesn't fit 7 a.m. 2,300 days is a unit of time. Okay. However, again, none of them cited favorably any of the core beliefs of Ezra 7 or Daniel 9:25 that Adventists believe in their chronology. However, these 2 authors were very critical of Seventh-day Adventists. This one in particular cites, as a footnote here, William Miller and his false 1843-1844 prophecy. Of course, we all know William Miller was a false prophet and how that relates to Seventh-day Adventism. This author here cited Uriah Smith in his Daniel and Revelation book on how Uriah Smith completely got the 2,300 days incorrect. So I had 2 authors here that were just absolutely critical and ridiculing Seventh-day Adventism. So I said earlier, I mentioned some of these scholars were horrible, and I use the term scholar loosely. I'll just share a couple of examples with you here. Some noted findings that I had here as I was going through these. I picked up this one. I had no idea what I was picking up. I opened it up to Daniel 9:24, and the very first words I read were the corrupt verses of Daniel 9:24 to 27. And I went, corrupt verses? I literally wanted to take this book and heave it across the room and say, this guy doesn't even believe in the scriptures. It's like amazing. So that's why I say I use the word scholar carefully. This one here, by the way, this is the one that cited the Seventh-day Adventists the most. I had 5 citations in here. Again, none of them cite the core doctrine of Seventh-day Adventists. This is a well-known scholar. He's well-known because he's a Daniel expert. He's recognized at that. But you know what the problem is, Seventh-day Adventist? This guy's a Catholic. And yes, I have found him cited favorably many times in Seventh-day Adventist literature, but they never tell you he's an evil Catholic. He probably wears a Jesuit robe when he's at home secretly walking around the house. But yet Adventists, they like John J. Collins, and have quoted many of his works several times. So again, he cites Adventism in his book, but he doesn't cite any of the core doctrine. It's just really meaningless stuff. Let me cite one scholar here that was a highlight of mine as I was doing this research. And this is one of the benefits of consulting scholars, not to learn what to believe, but to learn some other aspects, because modern archaeology sheds light on what we know about the Bible to this day. And this one certainly did. Scholar here is liberal in this series, in this book of Daniel, but the point that he brought up, fantastic. And you saw this in the I think it was the Ezra video on Ezra 7. The Qumran scrolls, when the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, they found an additional scroll, and again, I'm not going to repeat too much of it, the copper scroll, where the word karutz, they found it used. Because in Daniel 9:25, when it talks about the rebuilding of the city of Jerusalem, and it talks about the rebuilding of it in aspect, and you see the word moat, or you see the word trench, that's the only place that word occurs in the entire Old Testament, that is. So no one really knows, and has known, it's given translators grief for hundreds, if not 2,000 years, what that word really means, until they found the Dead Sea Scrolls and found the same word used to convey the idea of carrying water, like an aqueduct. Well, that makes sense. If you're going to have to rebuild Jerusalem, you've got to have a means to carry water, life-sustaining water, into a desert city of Jerusalem. So see, that's one of the huge benefits of consulting scholars in terms of what modern archaeology does, in terms of helping us understand. Now, the scholars often cite each other in these books. And there's often disagreements between the all-millennials and the millennials, and those that say there's no 1,000-year reign. No, I'm sorry, 1,000 years, no, it doesn't exist. And the 490 years ended in 164 BC, and others saying, no, there is going to be a literal 1,000-year reign, and the last week of the 490 hasn't happened yet. But what I find is that most of these scholars here are quoting other Christians, and maybe some disagreements that they have. They don't quote every prophecy nut that's out there, and there are lots of prophecy nuts out there and that have written books on Daniel and Revelation that are just crazy. And you know what? The Seventh-day Adventists are in that camp. So they simply can't do that. Now, the Seventh-day Adventists, in their commentary on Daniel, so I thought, okay, well, let me look at that. What do the Seventh-day Adventists do in their commentary? So here's volume 4 in the, I think it's 10 volume set. The commentary, Isaiah to Malachi, so it has Daniel. I said, okay, what do they do with it? So I look and I look through the whole thing. And you know what I found? I found one quote on the 2,300 days in here. And this is what it said. The quote was from 1906. 1906, that's over 100 years old. It's like, you know what? Modern archaeology and understanding of Hebrew and Aramaic has far exceeded what we knew in 1906. But Adventism. So basically, here's what they said in that quote in the book. That modern Christians, when they look at Daniel 8:14 and the 2,300 days, can't fit it into history. Can't fit their literal 2,300 days into history. They think it may have ended with Antiochus Epiphanes and the cleansing of the temple and the Maccabean revolt, but then they go back 2,300 days. They can't fit it into history, which means the 2,300 literal days just doesn't fit. And Christians are they're all befuddled and on the ground driveling because they can't figure it out. But we Adventists, we figured it out. How disingenuous and how dishonest. First of all, there are scholars who have gone backwards 2,300 days and said, oh yeah, we can fit it into history. But you know what else Adventists do? Whenever I read Adventist literature, I not only look at what's there, but I look at what's not there. And you know what's not there is, have you heard of the 1,150 days? Oh yeah. By the way, Daniel 8:14, when it says 2,300 days, like it says in the KJV, the King James, the word days isn't there. The word days in Hebrew is yom, like Yom Kippur, yom, days, not in Daniel 8:14. So whenever you read a translation that says 2,300 days, the translators added the word days because it's not there. Well, what is there? It says 2,300 evenings and mornings. Well, what does that mean? You know, here's where there is scholarly disagreement because of the ambiguity. There are some scholars, this is one in particular who I mentioned in the first video, Joyce Baldwin, who says, you know, it's 2,300, it says evenings and mornings. Well, because the prophecy is related to the temple and it's being desecrated, the 2,300 evenings in the morning, the 20 evenings and mornings is a relationship to the sacrifices in the temple in the evenings and mornings. So you have a sacrifice in the morning, you have a sacrifice in the evening, and that's one day. So something in the morning, something in the evening, and that's one day. Well, that's not 2,300 days. That's maybe 2,300 sacrifices or events with one in the morning and one in the evening. So it's really not 2,300 days. It's, well, half of that, 1,150 days. There are some Christian scholars who think it's really 1,150 days, and they can fit that in a historical time frame too. And some think it, and some do think it's 2,300 days. So to say, you know, it's 2,300 days is to say something the scriptures themselves do not say. The word days is not there. And it's left open to some ambiguity and interpretation. So the SDA are wrong, and they are deceitful, and they do not present the true arguments in the Christian world. They hide it. But then Seventh-day Adventists are deceptive. All right. So what do I find when I look in the Seventh-day Adventist again, the commentary, besides what they leave out? I find some scholarly references here, and some more modern ones, and some related to some archaeology. You know, well, we found this tablet and it said this, etc. Nothing of any significance in terms of interpreting Daniel 8:14 and 9:20, you know, 9:24 to 27. But you know what I find at the end of every chapter here in the book of Daniel? Are references to works. Not references to go read other, perhaps, scholars, but references to Ellen White, and Ellen White only. I was astounded. I get to the end of every chapter and it's like, oh, here's a dozen. Oh, wait, at the end of this chapter, it's like 3 dozen. So I counted them. You know how many Ellen White references there are just in the book of Daniel? For references for Seventh-day Adventists to go back and consult, there are over 500. They don't even reference the Bible 500 times in the book of Daniel. But they reference Ellen White 500 times. You know what this means? Ellen White is the sole interpreter of the Bible in Seventh-day Adventism. Just go to the end of every chapter in this commentary set. And who do you find? Ellen White, and Ellen White alone. 500 plus times in the book of Daniel alone. So, in summary, your Adventist view of Daniel 9:24 to 27, outside the bounds of Protestant Christianity. Nobody even regards it, nobody takes it serious, and in some cases it is absolutely ridiculed and held up for criticism, as it rightly should be. Adventists, you're in a camp all on your own. Your Daniel and Revelation seminars and what you think you know about Daniel and Revelation, first of all, I've already said it several times in this video, it's just flat wrong, and it's been proven not by scholars but by the Word of God itself. Adventism, your association with Protestants that you always like to make, you got to stop it because it's not true. You're Adventist. You're not Protestant. You're not Christian. Nobody in the Christian community recognizes the views, prophetical views of Daniel 8:14 and 9:25 like the Adventists do. That's why you stand alone and outside. You're not my brother in Christ. You're my brother in Adam. You are not Christian. So Seventh-day Adventists, it's time to get out of this false religion.